It's a project of contemplation of the divine, where a person uses their rational faculties, their mind. He's got big chapters on this concept of the sechel hapoel, this idea of this particular sort of emanated intelligence from God that works upon the active intellect of human beings to allow them an apprehension. The Rambam has a very big understanding of the concept of tselem, the concept of the image of what man created in the image of God, meaning that man is born with an intellect that can apprehend the divine, without which we would have absolutely no consciousness that there is a God in the world at all. But that Sechel HaPoel allows us, and through Judaism, allows the idea of God to come into the world and achieve its full intellectual development. These are very, very big ideas of the Rambam, but what I want to emphasize with the Rambam is this emphatic stress on the concept of intellectual and philosophical development. The last thinker in that particular bracket is probably the Ralbag. Levi ben Gershon, living more or less in the end of the 13th, beginning of the 14th century. First person, really, to develop trigonometric tables to 5 decimal places. There is, for centuries, they were using his mathematical charts as the basis of astronomy and navigation. In fact, there is a crater on the moon named after him, Rabbi Levi's crater. The Ralbag is a huge, huge figure. I mentioned the Ralbag briefly because in this discussion that this discussion emerging in the Middle Ages, the Rambam touches upon it but never really solves it. Sadja had touched upon it but never really solved it. And the problem is this. You want to tell me, Sadja, Rambam, everybody else, you want to tell me that I have free will. And it's a fundamental basis of your philosophical approach. Sadja says you've got to have free will because you've got to be able to choose to do mitzvot or choose not to do evil in order to affect your purpose as a human being in the world. Free choice is fundamental. How do I have free choice when God knows what I'm going to do? Surely my free choice is obliterated by the omniscience of God. And what's God playing at? Is it like just some personal amusement? Are we like Lego on a board? I mean, really? Do I really have free choice if God knows the past, the present, and the future? The Ralbag answers this radically. He's the only thinker really that in the entire philosophical tradition that comes along and says this. And he's prepared to stick his neck out, and he's prepared to say, in Milchamot Hashem, that your free choice is so important, so fundamental to the structure of the universe, that I'm prepared to limit the omniscience of God. God does not know what you're going to do. It's very radical. I knew you wouldn't like it.
Really radical.
It's very radical. Have you read Milchamot Hashem? He tells you. He says. Yeah, he has an issue with creation ex nihilo. Well, no. You know what? Now I'm going to adjust that. He says he doesn't say that he doesn't believe in creation ex nihilo. He just says that a coterminous eternal universe is not necessarily a philosophical problem if you're Jewish. That's all he says. He doesn't say that he doesn't believe in Yishmaelian. He just says it's not a problem the other way.
But he says it's not just to say. He just doesn't have extra ink.
You get a lot of ink, dude. A lot of ink. The thing is, because we'll make Chilukim on the Rambam, so let me make Chiluk on the Rambam. The thing about the Rambam is it's an extremely radical point, and it's a very important point for the consequent development of Jewish thought. Free choice is so primary that our concept of God can come at the expense of it. This was not only regarded radically by us tonight, it was regarded as very, very problematic by the philosophers that came right later. Because at the end of that century, at the end of the 14th century, there is a huge shift in Jewish thought. This is what I would call the third big phase. We had the first phase of the Platonists, then we had the second phase of the Aristotelians, and that's the basic framework I wanted to bring tonight. We have a third big shift that happens at the end of the 14th century. In Spain, you know that things weren't going so great in Spain by the time we get to the end of the 1300s. By 1391, there were some very big massacres right across Spain, in which was killed the son of one of the big rabbis of Spain, philosopher as well, a guy called Chasdai Crescus. Chasdai Crescus, despite the fact that his son was killed in the massacres of 1391, didn't stop him sitting down and writing one of the most astonishing books in the whole of Jewish philosophy, a book called Or Hashem, the Light of God. In this, Crescus is deeply troubled by what he has seen as the previous few hundred years development in Jewish philosophical thought, the overemphasis by guys like Ibn Dawud, by guys like the Rambam and the Ralbag on intellectualism. It is an anti-Aristotelian reaction. He first of all wants to tell you, Aristotle is not everything, I'm here to tell you. He was the flavor of the month in the 12th and 13th centuries, but he's not anymore. In fact, I think he's wrong on a number of key issues, says Crescus. But that's not the point of Or Hashem. The point of Or Hashem is that Crescus sits down. Some people misunderstand Or Hashem. They think that Crescus is supplying 6 basic, like the Rambam provided 13 principles of Judaism. They think that Crescus is providing 6. He's not. Crescus is providing 6 basic parameters by which philosophical thought can take place. You can think whatever you want, but you can't go over, in your philosophical thinking, these 6 issues.
How's that different from an ikra?
It's subtle. It's subtle. That's true. Let me think about that. That's a good point. He makes a distinction, because I'm going to get onto Ikarim in a moment with this Talmud, of course. But I mean, it's that he's showing these limits because he's trying to show where the previous philosophers have gone wrong. First of all, the first thing he tells you, and this is really, I mean, he takes big issues with the Rambam, but the first thing he tells you is that he wants to have a crack at the Ralbag. He tells you, God is omniscient. The Ralbag, Levi ben Gershon, nice guy, clever guy, but he's talking dribble. God knows. Freedom is ultimately relational. I mean, and he's not the only person to say this in the history of thought. You feel free, you are free. You're not free in relation to the divine, but the divine is so beyond your intellect, so beyond being, that that's not going to pose a problem for your freedom. But I don't want to hear that God's omniscience is limited. God is also omniprovident. It's not God's providence. I mean, the Rambam had said to you, the Rambam was so fixated on this idea of philosophical speculation that the Rambam tells you that the idea of hashgacha pratit, the idea of divine individual providence, exponentially grows with your own intellectual development. The more enlightened you become, the more you attract to yourself divine providence. Crescus says nonsense. Divine providence is equal right across the board. God is also omnipotent. Any discussion must begin with the concept that God... You guys are living proof of why I didn't want to do this talk. Okay. It's not what philosophy is not what I normally talk on, but I'm talking on Jewish history, Tanakh, Kabbalah, whatever. But philosophy is interesting. Anyway. Any discussion which starts with the words, can God, you know that famous thing we've all heard, can God, create a stone too heavy for him to pick up, all those sort of nonsense questions, right? The answer, yes. Anything which starts with the words God can, yes.
So he's not bound by logic.
Not bound by logic, not bound by, by human logic, and not bound by the logic of the Rambam, he's not bound by the logic of Aristotle, he's not bound by anything. I'm not going to have some foreskinned Greek of the 4th century tell me who my God is and what he can and cannot do, says Crescus. So God's completely omnipotent. God also, when it comes to prophecy, it is not the case that we arrive at Nubuwah, at prophecy, through some sort of concentrated philosophical development over years. God chooses prophets whoever he wants to be a prophet. He can choose the biggest, rudest ignoramus to suddenly be a prophet, or he can choose the greatest sage.
Look up
It is, sorry?
Noah.
Yes, for example, or a number of people in this room.